All right, welcome everyone. In this video, we're going to discuss some of the main packages in tools to use along with the SF package to work with simple features and spatial data. I just want to mention again that this is a static HTML document that we're looking at in this video, and then we'll shortly switch over to working with a Quarto document in Posit Cloud, and there are links to all of the relevant materials in the description of this video. The SF package is the main R package that is designed to work with simple features, and we'll call those SF objects in R because that's the class of the object that the SF package generally creates. And the SF package we can use to import, create, manipulate, and plot SF objects. And it is a newer package which is intended to supersede this older SP package, which is a fine package, but the SF package is a newer package that uses some improved ways of working with spatial data. It also uses the simple features common storage, which means that you can work with people using other software more easily if you're using the SF package. But if you're looking at some older code, you might see that people might be using the SP package for data visualization of spatial data. But we'll be focusing on the SF package in this video. And SF objects, these are stored as tidy data. So that means these SF objects work particularly well in the tidyverse. So we can use the dplyr package to manipulate SF objects. So we don't need to learn a whole new set of grammar to do manipulations. We can use our kind of previous work with the dplyr package. The ggplot2 package also works really well with SF objects for visualizations. There's actually geomes that are built into ggplot2 specifically to work with simple features. So that those are two packages that integrate really well with SF objects. And that's great because those are probably the most popular packages for data manipulation and visualization. And I also want to talk about color palettes. That is an important part of the visualizations for spatial data because we oftentimes are going to be putting like heat maps on top of a region, which is encoding information about the value of some attribute. And so we want that color palette to have a gradient that might make sense for the problem that we are working with. And so in base R, there is a package which is called GR devices that has tons of color palettes. So down below, these first 5 color palettes, these are kind of the traditional R color palettes. And then in about 2020, they released in R 4.0.0, they're integrated a whole bunch of new palettes that are called HCL colors. And there are some much nicer color palettes to use than these older ones, but these are the traditional ones. So particularly people that have written code prior to 2020, they're very likely to use one of these color palettes. I recommend using some of the other color palettes that we'll take a look at in a moment. The newer ones have some really nice color gradients. But here are 5 of them, and I think out of these 5, when you're working with spatial data, at least the 2 most useful ones here for me would be like the terrain or the heat, since these have gradients that actually seem to be encoding some sort of information. So like the terrain palette starts off at green, which seems like this could be good for encoding like things that are wet and lush. And then it's getting darker brown, and that could encode like things that are getting more arid. So that might make sense based on the data that you're trying to convey. If you're dealing with like heat maps or maybe temperatures or things like this, the heat colors is a nice choice because it has like a reasonable gradient going from red all the way up to like white hot. So you can kind of see how an object might be getting hotter as you move over through the left of this color gradient. The CM colors and the rainbow and the topo, I don't know, the CM colors are pretty boring compared to some of these others. The topo colors in the rainbow, they have they're pretty to look at. They have nice spectrum of color, but the gradient that is being used might not be ideal for some of based on the data that you're trying to depict in your visualization. And down below are more of the HCl color palettes. So you can see that there was a big improvement, and I will zoom in on some of this and point out a couple of particularly useful ones. Okay, so out of these various color palettes, down at the bottom here, there is a palette called Plasma, or excuse me, Viridis. This is the one I want to point out first. So Viridis is a nice one because this was a color palette that was designed particularly to use colors and a color scheme that is more friendly for people that have trouble picking up color changes. It's more colorblind friendly. And what is also nice about this Viridis color palette is that it is designed to work well with black and white. So it should display nicely on a black and white monitor or printout or something like that. So if you have limited colors to use and you want to go back and forth between, using these full colors or using a white, grayscale, Viridis is a really nice choice. So I recommend checking out that one. And Plasma is pretty similarly nice. It has similar properties. I think this color scheme is also, it's pretty close to the Viridis, and it is supposedly more friendly for colorblind people. And it also displays nicely in black and white. Inferno and Rocket, these are also pretty close and nice color palettes to use. And there is another one over here, which is called C-Viridis. And this is like a corrected Viridis color palette, which is supposed to be an improvement on the Viridis, actually. So this is supposed to be good and accessible for people that have trouble picking up on color, as well as printing out nicely in black and white. And there are various others. A lot of these color palettes are like single colored, like blue 3, purple 2, that just use, and there are some greens and teals over here. So sometimes it's nice to use like a single color palette. Those might look nice. And there are other sort of like rainbowy types of color palettes that you can choose from in here. And I just want to also mention that these newer color palettes, they're not that new. They came out in about 2020. They're super nice, but before that was available in Base R, Color Space was another package that people tend to use to get similar color palettes as the HCl colors that are now available in Base R. So if people have older code and they haven't updated it, it's very possible that they might be using the Color Space to get color palettes. So I just want to point that out to you. I would recommend just using the color palettes that are now available in Base R so that you don't have to install and load the Color Space package. Okay, so in the next video, we are going to switch over into working with an interactive Quarto version of these materials, and we'll start loading some packages and running some code cells. Okay, so that's a wrap for this video, but I will see you in the next video in Posit Cloud. Thanks, everyone.